Hello everyone, welcome. So today we will be doing class 12, chapter 11 biotechnology principles and processes. So first coming up with biotechnology. What is biotechnology? It deals with the techniques of using live organisms or enzymes from organisms to produce products and processes useful to human beings. Now, in this sense, making curd, bread, or wine, which are all the micro-mediated processes, could also be thought as a form of biotechnology. However, it is used in a restricted sense today to refer to such processes which use genetically modified organisms, which we call it as GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Okay, so the process, the techniques which are included, it comes under biotechnology. For example, in vitro fertilization, leading to test tube babies, synthesizing of genes, using it, developing of DNA, vaccines, or correcting a defective gene, all this belong to the biotechnology. We have the European Federation of Biotechnology, which have defined biotechnology that encompasses both traditional view and the modern molecular biotechnology. So, according to EFB, the definition of biotechnology is the integration of natural science and organism cells, parts thereof, and molecular analogues for the products and the services. Now, specifically coming to what are the principles of biotechnology. So, first principle of biotechnology is genetic engineering. What is genetic engineering? Is the techniques to alter the chemistry of the genetical material to introduce these into the host organism and thus change the phenotype of a host organism. So, whenever we talk about, there are two things. One is genotype and one is phenotype. So what is genotype and what is phenotype? So genotype is the genetic makeup and phenotype is the outcome, I can say, or the feature that we are able to visualize. So all this genetic makeup, it leads to the phenotype or the characteristics that I can say. So if I say there is one specific genetic code which which says that this particular protein is produced, if it is not, so we have an example of, say, sickle cell anemia. Okay, sickle cell anemia, what happens in this case? So the genetic change that happens, it leads to the sickle shape of the RBCs, right? Okay, so this is genetic engineering. Herein they try to alter the genes so that the outcome, and it is introduced into the host organisms, the phenotype will be different. Then we have bioprocess engineering, where the maintenance of sterile ambience in chemical engineering processes to enable growth of only the desired microbe or eukaryotic cell in large quantity for the manufacturing of biotechnological products like antibiotics, vaccines, and all those. Now, herein we are next coming into just to understand the conceptual development of the principles of genetic engineering. First, we'll come across the which provides variations and formulations of unique combination of genetic setup. So there is a traditional hybridization. So usually what happens, asexual reproduction preserves the genetic informations, whereas sexual reproduction permits variation. So the traditional hybridization procedures used in plants and animal breeding very often lead to inclusion and multiplication of the desired genes along with the genes along with the undecided. So undecided genes as well as desired genes, they will multiply. The techniques of the genetic engineering, which include creation of recombinant DNA, use of gene cloning and gene transfer, overcome this limitation and allow us to isolate and introduce only one set of desirable genes without introducing the undesirable genes. So whenever we talk about we talk about the host DNA, the plasmids, or the replication which takes place. So this replication, why does it take place? Because of the presence of an alien piece of DNA which become a part of the chromosome, which has the ability to replicate. In a chromosome, there is specific DNA sequence called as origin of replication, or we say it as ORI. So you will see this origin of replication, so that this alien piece of DNA can replicate. This is called cloning. Now, if we talk about the construction of the first recombinant DNA, emerged from the possibility of linking a gene encoding antibiotic resistance with a native plasmid. So, of Salmonella typhimurium, Stanley Cohen and Herbert Boyer accomplished this in 1972 by isolating the antibiotic resistance gene by cutting out a piece of DNA from a plasmid which was responsible for conferring antibiotic resistance. The cutting of DNA at specific location became possible with discovery of molecular scissors, which is known as restriction enzymes. The cut piece of DNA was then linked with the plasmid DNA. These plasmid DNA act as vectors to transfer the piece of DNA attached to it. Okay, so the linking of antibiotic resistance gene with the plasmid, how did it take place? It took place because of a DNA ligase which acts on the cut DNA molecules and joins their ends. This makes a new combination of the circular autonomously replicating DNA created in vitro and is known as recombinant DNA. When this DNA is transferred into E. coli, then we have the closely related to Salmonella, it could replicate in the new host. Fine, this is the cloning that is taking place. So here there are three basic steps that take place. One is identification of desirable gene. Second is introduction of identified DNA into host. And third is maintenance of the recombinant DNA in the host and transfer to the DNA to its progeny. Now, what are the different tools of recombinant DNA technology? So, the recombinant DNA technology, we use different tools. What are they? They can be restriction enzymes, they can be polymerase enzymes, they can be ligases, vectors, and the host organism. Now, first coming to restriction enzyme. How does restriction enzyme work? In the year 1963, the two enzymes responsible for restricting the growth of bacteriophage in E. coli were isolated. One of these added methyl group to the DNA while the other cut the DNA. The latter was called restriction enzyme. The first restriction endonuclease which was isolated was HIND2, whose functioning dependent on a specific DNA nucleotide and was isolated and characterized 5 years later. It was found that HIN2 always cut DNA molecules at a particular point by recognizing a specific sequence of 6 base pairs. This specific basis is known as recognition site. So there might be here there is the 6 base site, and here the HIND2 will come and cut. So this is known as recognition site. Okay, now besides HIND2, today we know many 900 restriction enzymes have been isolated and 230 strains of bacteria, each of which recognize different recognition sequence. The convention for naming the restriction enzyme is the first letter of the name comes from the genus, second letter, first letter is is coming from the genus. So if I say E. coli, say that is ECO. Okay, then after that the second letter comes from the species, the prokaryotic cell. So E, so first letter you see Escherichia is E, the second letter is the second two letters comes from the species, that is coli. So this is Escherichia, this is coli. And then after that, what we have? Then we have the prokaryotic cell from which it has been isolated. So eco. Then after that, we have the strain from which has been isolated, eco R1. So this is how it is said, eco R1. So this Roman number 1 indicates the order in which the enzyme were isolated. Okay, this is the first enzyme that got isolated from eco R. So here it is eco R1. Fine. Now restriction enzymes belong to a large class of enzymes called nuclease. These are two kinds, exonuclease and endonuclease. Exonuclease, what they will do, they will remove the nucleotides from the ends of the DNA, whereas endonuclease will cut at a specific site. Now each restriction endonuclease functions by inspecting the length of the DNA sequence. Once it finds a specific recognition sequence, it will bind the DNA and cut each of the two strands of the double helix. So if you see here, you have this. So if you see here, it is getting this particular, see, this is the restriction enzyme. It gets the sequence GAATTC. So GAATTC, once it gets it, it's the same site. Eco R1, once it gets, it cuts, how we write, GAATTC. So here is where is the recognition site, or this is where it will go and cut. So here again I will have GAATTC. So here it will cut. Eco R1 will cut here. Okay, so it is now forming a sticky end of the both, and they will come and join. So if I have with this the vector DNA is coming and the foreign DNA, so they both will come and join. Okay, next. So as we already said, and now restriction, now what happens is now coming into the DNA ligase. So what is DNA ligase doing? It is ligating. It is sticking the two strands of DNA. Okay, so these leaves single strand portions, and then what happens? The DNA ligases will stick the two enzymes, two sites. Okay, so restriction endonuclease is used for genetic engineering to form recombinant molecules of DNA which are composed of DNA from different sources or genomes. So you see here, so there is a foreign DNA, and here we have the vector DNA plasmid. So they are being cut down. Once it is cut down, then here you see the ligase is being used and the foreign DNA is being attached. Okay, then it is introduced into the E. coli, so that now the cell division will take place. Okay, now separation and isolation of DNA fragments, how do you do? So the cut DNA by restriction endonuclease results in fragments of DNA. These fragments can be separated by a technique called as gel electrophoresis. Since DNA fragments are negatively charged molecules, they can be separated by forcing them to move towards the anode under the electric field through a medium or matrix. So here we have a formation of gel electrophoresis, and nowadays commonly used matrix is agarose, which is natural polymer extracted from seaweeds. The DNA fragments will separate according to their size, sieving just like a sieving effect, which is provided by the pore size in the agarose gel. Okay. Now, the separated DNA fragments, they can be visualized under the UV once you expose it to the UV. So, you can see orange colored bands of DNA in which ethylene bromide stained gel exposed to UV light. The separated bands of DNA are cut out from the agarose gel and extracted from the gel piece. This step is known as elution. So, we can elute the required DNA. Now cloning vectors. Now coming to cloning vectors. So Here this plasmid has to be cloned in a vector, and therein the number of copies will be made. Okay, their numbers can go on higher and higher. If we are able to link an alien a piece of DNA with a bacteriophage or plasmid DNA, we can multiply it numbers equal to the copy number. Now vectors used at present are engineered in such a way that they can help easy linking of the foreign DNA and selection of the recombinant. So here if we say we have a common vector that we use is PBR322. P, it's comes from plasmid. Okay, and there are, if you see, there are few restriction sites which is there. So there is two antibiotic resistance is there, ampicillin and tetracycline, and then we have got in the tetracycline we have BAMH1 and SAL1, whereas in ampicillin zone we have PBU1 and PST1, and in drop we have the PVU1, and here we have EcoR1 site as well, and here the restriction site EcoR1, CLAV1 and Hint3. So these are various restriction sites that is there. Now there is an origin of replication, as I was stating, ORI, origin of replication, where the restriction replication would start, okay, of the linked when linked to the sequence, and can be made to replicate within the host cell. So this sequence is also responsible for controlling the copy number of the linked DNA. So if we want to recover many copies of the target DNA, it should be cloned in a vector whose origin support the high copy number. Then we have selectable markers. Selectable markers are which? Selectable markers are ampicillin resistant and tetracycline resistant. So here the transformation, it is a procedure through which the piece of DNA is introduced in the host bacterium. Normally the genes encoding resistance to antibiotics such as ampicillin, chloramphenicol, tetracycline, kanamycin, etc. are considered useful as a selectable marker. Then we have a cloning site. So here, as I was telling you, what are the cloning sites? There are recognition sites which is there, and presence of more than one recognition site within a vector will generate several fragments which will complicate the gene cloning. So the ligation of alien DNA is carried out at restriction site present in one of the two antibiotic resistance gene. Now for example, if you ligate a foreign DNA, so you are ligating a foreign DNA. If you ligate a foreign DNA at BAMH1 site of tetracycline resistant gene of vector PBR322, the recombinant plasmid will lose tetracycline resistance due to insertion of the gene there. But this will be resistant to ampicillin. Okay, so the transformants will grow on ampicillin containing medium, and then so you will grow it in ampicillin content medium, so it will grow and then transfer it into the tetracycline. So the recombinants will not grow in ampicillin containing medium, but not on that containing tetracycline. So what is happening, it is in this way. So we have the recombinants, we have two, this one here we have ampicillin and here we have tetracycline. Okay, so I take a sponge and I just dip into this solution, and then I can see colonies. So there are numerous colonies that are growing. Okay, but when I take this, I just take a copy of it and then transfer it into the tetracycline. Then I can see there might be few growths. So those places where the growth is not there, they are the recombinants. Okay, so that is how you will find out. Now selection of recombinant due to inactivation of antibiotic is a cumbersome procedure because it requires simultaneous plating of two plates having different antibiotic. Therefore, alternate markers have also been developed. Like we have, therefore, alternate markers have been developed which differentiate the recombinant from the non-recombinant on the basis of their ability to produce any color. Okay, chromogenic substrate. In this, a recombinant DNA is inserted within the coding sequence of an enzyme, say beta-galactosidase. Now, these results in inactivation of gene of synthesis of this enzyme, which is referred to as insertional inactivation. The presence of chromogenic substrate gives blue colored colonies if the plasmid is in bacteria does not have the insert. Presence of insert results into the insertional inactivation of the beta-galactosidase gene, and the colonies do not produce any color. They are identified as recombinant colonies. Now, vectors for cloning this gene in plants or animals. So, we have to just give this gene. So, they are delivered to transform into the eukaryotic cell. So, what happens is, say for example, we have Agrobacterium tumefaciens, a pathogen for several dicot plants, where we say this delivered with the DNA, and which is known as tDNA, which is tumor. T stands for tumor. Okay, so what it will do, it will transform the normal plant cells into tumor and will direct these tumor cells to produce chemicals required by the pathogen. Similarly, retroviruses in animals have the ability to transform normal cells into cancerous cells. A better understanding of the art of delivering gene by pathogen in the eukaryotic host has generated knowledge to transform these tools of pathogen into useful vectors for delivering genes of insert to humans. The tumor-inducing plasmid, the TI plasmid of Agrobacterium tumefaciens have been modified into cloning vector, which is no more pathogenic to the plants but is still able to use mechanisms to deliver genes of our interest into variety of plants. Similarly, retroviruses have been disarmed and now are being used to deliver desirable genes into the animals. Okay, now competent host for transformation with recombinant DNA. So now formation of host. Okay, so since DNA is hydrophobic molecule, it cannot pass through the cell membrane. So, in order to force the bacteria to take up the plasmid, the bacterial cell must first be made competent. This is done by treating them with specific concentration of divalent ions such as calcium, which increases the efficiency with which the DNA enters the bacterium through pores into the cell wall. Now, recombinant DNA can be forced into the cell by incubating the cells with recombinant DNA on ice, followed by placing them briefly at 42 degrees Celsius, which is heat shock, and then putting them back into the ice. This enables the bacterium to take up the recombinant DNA. The other way is microinjection, where the alien DNA is injected or introduced into the host. The recombinant DNA is directly injected into the nucleus of the animal cell. So the other is where the suitable plants, they are bombarded, which is biolistics. So they are bombarded with a high velocity microparticles of gold or tungsten coated with DNA. So there are various ways how the this recombinant DNA is introduced into the host. Okay, then processes of recombinant DNA technology. What is the process of rDNA technology? First is isolation of genetic material. So first what we require to do is isolate the DNA, then fragmentation of DNA by restriction enzyme. So herein what you have, you will extract the DNA, then you will cut it into pieces. Okay, once you cut it in the pieces, you will isolate the desired gene. So once the desired gene is isolated, then what you will do is you will ligate it in the vector. And then you will make this recombinant DNA and transform it into the cell. Okay, and then go ahead with replication, get the desired product. So isolation of DNA. So isolation, in order to cut the DNA with restriction, it needs to be in the pure form, free from other macromolecules. Since the DNA is enclosed within the membrane, it is important for us to break the membrane, okay, the nucleus. So now the DNA along with other macromolecules such as RNA, proteins, polysaccharides and also lipids. This can be achieved by treating the bacterial cell and plant cell with enzymes such as lysozyme, cellulase and chitinase. So here what happens, the RNA can be removed by the treatment of ribonuclease, whereas proteins can be removed by treatment of protease, and other molecules can be removed by appropriate treatment, and purified DNA ultimately precipitates out after addition of chilled ethanol. So this can be seen as collection of fine threads in the suspension. Then next is we have to cut this DNA at specific location. For that, what we need to use? We need to use a restriction enzyme. And once the restriction enzyme cuts the DNA, so what we will do? We will at optimal conditions which is there, we will add the restriction enzyme and keep it for some time for it to act. Then we will allow these restriction enzymes cut DNA to run through the agarose gel. So that is agarose gel electrophoresis will take place. Okay, now DNA is negatively charged, so it will move. The joining of the DNA involves several processes after having been cut, as well as vector DNA with the specific restriction enzyme. The source DNA and the cut DNA, they are being ligated together by using a ligase. So this results in recombinant DNA. Then after that, what is required? Multiplication is required. That is why we use PCR, polymerized chain reaction. PCR, polymerized chain reaction. So how does PCR work? So we have the gene of insert, that is inserted. So in PCR we have got 3 steps. One is denaturation, annealing and extraction. So first step, denaturation. What happens? In the denaturation, there is a set of primers and the enzyme DNA polymerase. This enzyme extends the primer using the nucleotide provided in the reaction and the genomic DNA as a template. So herein what happens at high temperature? So there are the primers which gets added, and there are the primers which gets added to the 3' end, and then there is the replication that will take place. This is extension. So denaturation, breaking of the double stranded DNA. So this was your DNA. So there is the breaking of, okay, so let me draw this was your DNA. So what happens is this DNA, it got broken at this fork. So there is a fork which is being created, and there is a primer that gets added, that is annealing, and then there is an extension that takes place. Fine. Now insertion of recombinant DNA into the host. So to insert the recombinant DNA into the host, we studied PBR 322. So we use antibiotic resistant, which is transferred into E. coli and transferred into ampicillin resistant cells. If we spread the transformed cell on agar plate containing ampicillin, only the transformants will grow. Untransformed recipients cells will die, since due to ampicillin resistant, one is able to select the transformed cell in presence of ampicillin. So this is known as selectable markers. Now obtaining foreign gene product. So how do we obtain the foreign gene product? So when you insert this foreign gene into a clonal vector and transform into a bacterial, plant or animal cell, this DNA which contains this DNA, the foreign DNA, they will get multiplied. Now ultimately what will happen? They will start producing the desirable proteins. And here what happens, there is a need of the recombinant DNA to be expressed. So the foreign gene gets expressed under appropriate conditions, and the expression of foreign gene in host cells involve understanding many technical details. So if any protein encoding gene is expressed in heterologous host, it is called recombinant protein. The cells harboring cloned gene of interest may be grown on a small scale in the laboratory. The cultures may be used for extracting the desired protein and then purifying it by using different separation techniques. Now, the cells can also be multiplied in continuous culture system wherein the used medium is drained out and from one side, while the fresh medium is added from the other, and the cells in the physiologically most active and they reach the exponential phase. This type of culturing method, produces a larger biomass regarding higher yields of the desired proteins. So small volume cultures cannot yield to appreciable quantities of the product. So to have a large quantity, we developed bioreactor, where the large volumes of the culture can be processed. This bioreactor is used as if it's a vessel. It's just a vessel. You just put the raw materials into it. There's a continuous agitation that is there. You maintain all the temperature, pH, oxygen, that's dissolved oxygen, substance, salts, vitamins, everything. If you just maintain it, you will get a good product. And we have a stirred tank reactor, which is continuously stirred tank reactor, which is there. So here you can see the bioreactors which is there. So here there is a motor. Here you see a foam is there, acid base pH control, sterilization is taking place, sterile air is sent through, and here we have the here we have it rotating. So once it is rotating, the culture broth is there, and once it is rotating, the foam is there, and to reduce the foam, we have a foam breaker. So that is there. So now in the continuously stirred, it's a cylindrical or curved base to facilitate the mixing of the reactor contents. So keeping everything, so periodically some amount is being extracted and they are being checked. Okay, next, downstream processing. Downstream processing is after the biosynthesis stage, the product has been subjected to a series of processes before it is ready for the marketing as a finished product. Now, the process includes separation, purification, which are collectively referred to as downstream processing. The product has to be formulated with suitable preservatives. Such formulation has to undergo through clinical trials as in case of drugs. Strict quality control testing for each product is also required. The downstream processing and quality control testing vary from product to product. Okay, so thank you.